Hey everyone, Yoyston here, and we are back for episode 3 of Rings of Power Season 2 with our review here. I hope you all are doing well wherever you are in Middle-earth. I'm joined once more by Royan. So, we've been building up to this episode 3 review. Royan, let's start with some positives here. So, hey, there was no stranger in this. There we go.
Positive, actually.
Big positive. I love the Pelargir mention, the map of that kind of like part of Middle-earth, the Gondor, pre-Gondor Mordor map that we got. Arondir, his return was insane, bro.
Arondir's a G.
Oh my gosh, when he just like jumped through and did some Jedi stuff, I was like, all right, like it's a bit far, but honestly, that's just kind of how it is these days. Like it got far when Legolas defied gravity in Battle of the Five Armies. So I'm like, whatever. That was sick. It was cool. It was rule of cool.
He does it in Return of the King too.
Right. Oh yeah. I really like the actor for Pharazôn. Like season 1, he was cool, but I really, really like him for season 2 and season 2 so far. What else here?
I like Elendil's actor too a lot.
Yes.
He doesn't do a whole lot in this episode, other than be kind of stoic. But dang, does he do stoic well?
He does. He really does. I think that our original theory that like the best plots are going to be the ones that are closest to the Rings of Power, to the main spot of like early Second Age, and I think that holds true. I think the best plots are the ones with the forging of the rings, having Durin and Celebrimbor and Sauron or Anatar in like the same room, and them kind of convincing the dwarves to actually contribute Mithril to the creation of these rings, the forging. I think is awesome. I think that is exactly like that was perfect. Like perfect, because you could see the manipulations. You can see Celebrimbor is the one being more the face of the operation, but Anatar is very clearly there, kind of influencing, and he even like grabs the Mithril and like corrupts it. You can see he's got his hands on this project, which is why eventually the rings will turn out so corrupted. Whereas the Elven rings that were made without his corruption, again out of order, it's different order than in the canon, which we'll get to in a bit, but. Why those were corrupted and all that stuff. I thought that was awesome. Númenóreans were okay. We'll kind of get more into that here. I think, like, I don't know, Isildur, I'm kind of buying into the actor and his kind of journey here a bit. But I feel like him coming across all these Númenórean bodies and like carts and things, they really biffed that battle so bad. I guess the mountain really screwed them up, like Mount Doom going off. But at the same time, the Númenóreans, you can't forget, they're like 6.5 to 8 feet tall. They're like just these bodybuilder fighters. Like they're insane. They're insane to fight. So the fact that you see all these Númenórean corpses everywhere, I'm like, that's a little weird. Like they were powerhouses until Sauron took them out. And even after that, they still almost like killed Sauron by themselves, but they needed the elves, but still. Let's see. Elves, men. I thought the dwarves, the reconciliation between Durin, the elder, and the younger was interesting. It wasn't super simple, but they got there. I actually, Royan, you know what? I care-ish. I care-ish about the men of the Southlands.
Yeah. I think that was
crazy.
That's the biggest revelation for me, is that in season 1, I could not care less about anybody in the Southlands plot who's not named Arondir. Yeah. And in season 2, they made a couple decisions that I think really just make it so much better. First of all, they have left Isildur out on his own to go on his adventure, where all of his like companions are going to be these Southlanders. I think that is a wise decision. You have somebody, and you're right, we buy more into Isildur. He was an interesting character in episode 1, but we didn't get enough time with him to care about him at all, or any of his problems or troubles, and so he was not very interesting. He has a very real problem now, but you see the kindness come through. You see the curiosity and the caring. And he's like, I want to be a good person here, because he truly believes, like, okay, these are men. They're not Númenóreans, but I do care about them. And I do think it's funny. I think they seem to be going a different route rather than just making the Númenóreans essentially super soldiers compared to the men of everywhere else in Middle-earth. They just make them better equipped. Númenor's rich. They show up with armor, real swords, horses, all these things. And they're getting got by what is essentially a guerrilla force. And I don't need to I don't need to explain to the audience why that's incredibly realistic.
True. I think, and that's the thing, though. There are a couple of moments like that where I'm not necessarily personally looking for realism myself all the time. Like, it's cool that's the case. You got this kind of economic difference between Númenor and the middlemen, but at the same time, there was something about the Númenóreans because we see it in Aragorn. Because I wouldn't just put Aragorn up next to random Rohirric soldier number 3 and be like, I mean, they're pretty compatible. No, it's like Aragorn, movies and books. You just see, he's like, oh, this guy is crazy. Like, he's almost a superhero, you know?
Yeah, that's a great point. I was going to say, like, I'm not sure what you expect. Do you want them to all be, like, CGI'd, like it's the Halo show?
I think perspective shooting.
You have something. You have something there. They got swamped. They got smacked. But I do think that for the narratives that they're trying to pull, it was kind of necessary because they want to give doubt in Queen Muriel. They wanted to give us reasons why she would be able to lose her whole throne.
It's fair. And honestly, it looks like they're going the route. Like, my problem with not showing the Númenóreans as strong potentially as they are in the source material is that Sauron, after his first encounter with their armies, is like, oh crap, they're going to be way worse for me than the elves are. Like, they are powerful. If I get on their wrong side, I'm done. And so, like, that will still, I think, happen, though. I don't think we've written that off entirely yet, especially because Halbrand was with them. But the fact that they're probably going to combine the War of the Elves and Sauron to be at the same point in the timeline as when men just, like, landed in Middle-earth and were like, screw you, Sauron, we're here to capture you. In my mind, those two moments mix well together anyway, even though there's a 1,000-year difference in the lore between those things, at least like 1,000+ years. I think they're going to mix those two. So as long as the Númenóreans seem imposing to Sauron, I'm okay. But so far, I don't really know why they would, especially because last season, like, Halbrand was going off and kind of making them look like chumps. But just beside the point. Yeah, I think there were some good things about this episode. Anything before we jump into more of the criticisms, Ryan?
I thought that it was a good decision. Okay, it's going to sound dumb, and it is going to sound. There is an argument to be made about fridging in this. Theo's mom / Arondir's totally not girlfriend, bro. Dying off screen. Questionable decision. What has it done for the plot? It's allowed Theo space to be a real character. Before, he was just an irritating, like, distraction. Now he has some level of, like, justification for his anger and stupid decision making, but also it just makes him. I just think having him be alone. And there's a reason why every coming of age story starts with somebody being orphaned, right? It really exposes a character to, like, a fast tracking maturity. And I do think that this is going to help Theo be a much better character. I
agree. I'm 90% sure he'll be a Nazgul by the end of this, but yeah.
There is a huge caveat on that with the whole fridging. And if you don't know what that means, look it up. Essentially, it's like, why is it always a woman has to die so that a male character can, like, grow?
Sure.
It comes with a somewhat almost comically stupid backstory. I actually will explain. So fridging is a concept where it's like a phenomenon where in stories, in works of art, it came out of comics to start. A woman, be it a wife, girlfriend, love interest, mother, all of them, doesn't matter, dies horrifically as a plot point for a male character. It's just the woman exists only as a drive. So it's something about, like, there's an argument to be made that it's very sexist or just kind of not that interesting. Like, come up with something else.
And not to diminish your point, but, like, because maybe there is room for that type of criticism or conversation within how they wrote the show. But I actually think this one was, I'm looking it up now, right? The actress who played Bronwyn, who played the Theo's mother, right? She actually didn't want to return for season 2 because she was focusing on other type of work.
Exactly, right? So sometimes it's written off. Sometimes you have to make a decision. Sometimes it's just bad writing. Now, the way I say this is an argument, and it's not a pure fridge, is that, what was her name? Bronwyn?
Bronwyn, yep.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot so many characters' names. I had to relearn them as I watched the episodes this morning. But Bronwyn actually was a real character, had stuff going on, was interesting. And so I don't know if it's a full fridge. A full, like, the original fridging, I think it was a comic book. I think it was a Green Lantern comic. Old. We're talking, like, golden age of comics old. It's, like, the first episode in this character's, like, and in, like, one of the early pages, he comes home and finds his wife in a fridge. It's like... Oh. The wife had not been introduced yet, except in that moment, opens a fridge, looks at his wife, and is like, my wife! And so, like, that's the level of, like, it's like, this woman is not a character. This woman is a prop.
Sure. I don't think that's the case with this one, because there was an acting decision. There's advocacy work involved, all this kind of stuff with her that she wanted to focus on. But I think, they took it and ran with it, right? They decided not to recast the role or anything, because they recast Adar, right? Adar was played by somebody else in season 1.
Well, I thought Adar was immediately going to get pushed off to the side and Sauron was going to take over, but that is not the path they're going. And let's talk. But before we get there, some more positives that I have. I did think that seeing intrigue. Now, it wasn't like Game of Thrones level intrigue, and it's tough because they want to be. I don't think it's a realistic. I don't think it's a realistic thing for shows to just be able to input without putting a ton of thought into it. But that was interesting, and we got to see a lot more about how this divided Númenórean house could get to what it was. I just agree with you. I wish that we saw Númenor be so cool before it gets broken apart, because it's Well, I think I wish that is what we would have gotten, right? Because again, like, the reason that they should have used perspective shots, they should have made them look bigger and buffer and also more united before they started to split up. But again, they decided we don't need a timeline anymore. we never needed a timeline, because this whole show you could make the argument has either happened over 6 months maybe, or 600 years. So you could make the argument either way, which is horrifying about this show. It's perhaps like from just a structural element. From just a structural element. I want to say is that this episode, if you're just comparing it to the other two, which I kind of am, it's exciting. Yeah, action occurs. Plot points ripen. Things turn, all right? It's an exciting episode where change occurs. And I got to give it credit, if for no other reason than I was actually interested in what was going on the television screen.
I will, but I think it lacks substance. I'll give it the credit for the changing, but I think a lot of it lacks substance. But I'll let you get your rant in about the Isildur opening first.
You mean the
Shelob moment.
Oh, no, I don't have a huge rant about that. The only thing that I thought, I meant more about the episode 1 opening. We'll talk about that.
Episode 1 opening. Okay, yeah.
The opening of this episode was kind of dumb, mostly because, but at the same time, it was just like, man, dude, not a single one of these Númenóreans have ever seen a movie, huh? Obviously, you should follow the horse, because it knows where he is. And then follow up. I wrote this in my notes, and I still am laughing at it. It's like the 1v4 horse clutch against the horse. Dude,
it was insane.
Was the first action scene of the season.
That's true. Oh my gosh.
The only thing that happened before that was a warg ate a dude off screen.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I mean, granted, because I was thinking about this, I was like, this horse is, like, insane. Numenorian horses, I do know they carried Numenorians. I'm willing to say that if this was a horse from Numenor, yeah, okay, maybe I could see some of that. But again, how is it that the horses are way crazier than the actual Numenorians? Like, how is it that these guys are getting bodied left and right, but the horse is crazy?
Hilarious. I was laughing so hard. And then there's like this moment, I thought it was so dumb that it was almost funny, where it's like the orcs are like, stop! Don't follow it out there. See, out there's the Black Forest. Nothing comes out of there alive. I'm like, what is this, a Disney Channel show?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? If you want to be a Game of Thrones level threat, you can't just have lines like that, man.
Okay, so since we're in this, I have actually 3. I'll space my rants out, and we'll just address them one by one because I think they're different. They're different plot.
Just tell me what plot lines, and then There's one orcs. Huge one. Okay, talk about the orcs.
There's a baby orc in here.
Yep.
And they've made a deal to like point it out. I have a huge problem with this. A massive problem in that they're humanizing the orcs to this degree. Like, I know they're calling Adar father and all this stuff. Here's the problem, though. If they are humanized so fully, then the Lord of the Rings is full of people committing genocide. Yeah. Because Aragorn and his kingdom wipe out the orcs in the Fourth Age. They wipe them out. Gandalf kills orcs indiscriminately. Even our Hobbit characters massacre orcs that are just trying to work for wages in Isengard. But no, they get drowned. Like, they get demolished by the Ents when the Ents invade Isengard. Like, well, apparently, again, if they're humanized, they should be. But they got murdered at work by Ents. Like, there's a massive problem. And I think I talked about it a bit in season 1. But the fact that they showed, like, a baby orc, bro, Rangers probably would have killed that thing. Like, I don't know. And here's another issue. Yes, do orcs mate in the same way as the children of Iluvatar? They do. That is confirmed in the lore. I think it's confirmed in the notes of Tolkien. However, how fast do these grow up? How much, like, are they actually babies? Like, are they baby orcs? Or are they, like, they're just little munchkins running around like goblins until they grow up, and they're not really things that are worth, letting survive. Because, again, in Tolkien's works, it's like they get massacred so fully. And in Tolkien's works, everything that they do is just like horrible and awful. And that, I think, is okay to show that on screen. Maybe it'll make them less three-dimensional, okay. But, like, you have to think about it. They're the nameless, faceless enemy, sure. They can still be interesting, though. But again, like, think Goblin Town. Bro, Bilbo, Gandalf, all the dwarves, they just massacre through these goblins who may have all had families. And now all of a sudden we're starting to humanize, I have a massive, massive problem with it. Because this isn't just some, like, these aren't orcs from Warcraft. These aren't orcs from D&D. They're twisted, perverted elves whose souls were literally, like, ripped from their bodies based on how much their bodies were perverted and scarred and mutilated. They were turned into husks. I actually think it's better to equate them to zombies than to humans in so many ways. And so humanizing them in this way is not a good ethical implication, because Aragorn, my favorite character of all time, killed many, many orcs. But again, in the context of how Tolkien wrote his works, in the context of how Peter Jackson made his movies, it makes sense. It's a big issue. It's a big issue. And honestly, it knocked my score down a few pegs by itself, because I'm like, oh, okay, like, Adar is just leading some misunderstood people. But then, in literally the same scene, you have this troll come in with an orc's head. I'm like, dude, are we humanizing them, or like what? Like, this is horrifying.
I don't know. I'm not going to say I disagree with you. What I am going to say is, like, I don't know if you're putting a cart before a horse a little bit here. So think about what we've seen in the show so far. All we've seen so far are orcs being standard evil, completely like hopeless orcs. Think about all the prisoners that they're taking, the way that they treat these prisoners. And we see these in the same episode. The only thing that we have seen that humanizes, quote unquote, is a baby orc on screen for a second, and potentially parents caring for it.
Well, a couple times we
presume that those two care.
I'll push back, because in season 1 and 2 we get a couple moments of like these moments between orcs and Adar of like, father, when are we going to be free? Like, father, you know, because Adar means father, right? And so they see him as their dad. Yeah. And he's like, you know, like, we'll be free, my children, kind of thing. Like, we'll be okay. And I'm like, ooh, like, again, ethical implications here, not great.
And I would say, like, if you know, maybe there is something to this, but at the same time, Adar's not actually living that. All of these people that have taken his mark are out, like, jumping random dudes that give them food.
Yeah, for sure. And they don't really get a second chance. Again, Arondir made sure of that. They were donezo. They were donezo. But I don't know. I ethically struggle with putting in the baby orcs here, because again, I get it. You want to humanize as many, just generally speaking, in writing, it's normally a good idea to humanize everyone of every side, make things morally complicated, make them interesting. But in this, bro, like, have these people seen the Lord of the Rings trilogy? Have they seen the Hobbit trilogy? Like, these guys are pure evil, and that's for also an ethical narrative reason. Like, think of how many supposedly innocent orcs were destroyed at the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, if these implications are in mind. They were just following orders. They were just trying to save their people from the Gondorians. But no, they were all murdered. Like, they were all just destroyed on the battlefield. Like, all of a sudden, it's not a simple story of good triumphing over evil. It's the, I mean, actually, somebody wrote this, oh man, I'm trying to remember, I'm blanking on it, but there's an essay, a philosophical essay of, are the rebels in Star Wars actually the bad guys because they blew up the Death Star, which is full of just manufacturers and workers working on the Death Star.
All these things we presume based on our own society. Like I said, so I mean, there are arguments to be made here. I don't know if I'm willing to fully push myself on your side until if I see orcs actually consider morality at some point. I think we have a discussion. What I think was intended is that they just wanted to show that orcs mate like people do, because the only way that we've seen orcs created is in the extended edition of the Two Towers, where Saruman pulls them out of the mud, which is one way to make an orc.
And again, I'm more okay with that, even though it's against the lore. I don't know, like, maybe I'm speaking in contradictory terms here, but it just, there are some moral dilemmas that we're gonna have in this very show because of this moment.
Can they talk, like, I don't know, is it in the appendices that orcs are corrupted elves with their souls taken out? Can they even talk about it? I don't think they have the rights to the Silmarillion, and I have a reason for that, because when I watched the credits of the end of episode 1, which is the only one I actually did, it says, based on the Lord of the Rings and its appendices.
And its appendices.
It does not say based on the Silmarillion.
They still use the name Anatar. And again, that might be from the appendices. I'd have to check. But, like, that's definitely Silmarillion as well. And extended notes. So I'm just saying, like, even if they didn't have the rights to it, I'm just saying, by them not showing it, it still wouldn't be an infraction of Silmarillion rights. You know? Like, we'll see how this moment plays out. But again, I have some reservations about it. It's like saying, you know, like, yeah, Palpatine, well, he was also a really caring dad. And so, by killing him, you get rid of this caring dad. It's like, oh man, there's some moral things that now are added because of that I don't necessarily think are great. Because then we have to ask, like, did Aragorn consider the implications of wiping out that many orcs? Could the orcs have ever been, like, you know, given their own society? Was it colonization and all these horrible things? Like, we get into conversations like that I don't really think belong in Middle Earth, that I don't think Tolkien intended for. He struggled, granted, yeah, he struggled with the morality of orcs. He did, like, that is a place in the lore where it's like, how much are they free will? How much are they conscious? How much are they not? I can
understand balking at that. I don't know if I think if you want advice, which may be condescending to give at this point, my advice is that I wouldn't let Rob paint the picture of how you think about Lord of the Rings.
Oh, for sure.
And if this is just something that's wrong for you and it really bugs you, that's totally cool, and own it. I gotta say, right now, for me, the only thing I wrote down about this note, you may laugh at this, the only thing I wrote down about this is, wow, we got Orc Woman before Elder Scrolls 6. What a world.
Yeah, Rings of Power will never inform how I see the Lord of the Rings trilogy or anything else. But I will always see Rings of Power as being less Lord of the Rings because of decisions like this.
Sure.
As being more of a fan fiction or like it's not really Lord of the Rings, but it's acting like it.
Yeah.
It's definitely not canon. It's definitely not canon, but almost like they really need to take the name Lord of the Rings out because this is about as Lord of the Rings as Skyrim is, right? As since you just mentioned that example, like it's getting to that point where I'm like, dude, why are you guys even calling this Lord of the Rings? Like, just call it something else. Call it Amazon's fantasy show. Like, come on, you know? Like, bro, it's just getting to a point, and it's been at that point for a while, granted. But I will say, again, nothing's made me too upset. This is the closest thing to it.
I still don't think that they've shown orcs in any way. The only way that you could argue is that they've been like Adar, who we don't know who he is or what he's about. Is he wants the orcs to have like their own society, and he's willing to kill anybody to get it done. But every time we see an orc on screen, they're attacking something. There's no thought. There's no consideration. There's not even self-preservation. Remember, there's an orc in this spider nest that gets freed by Isildur somewhat. What's the first thing it does? Does it work on getting out of the thing and then maybe looking to prey upon the weakened Isildur? No, he immediately tries to kill Isildur.
I guess then
this is not a being that is like taking time to consider not even just the morality of its actions. It's not even taking time to consider what's best for itself. It's seeing something and going into kill mode.
I guess to wrap up this rant, it would be, do those actions from those other orcs condemn the baby, though? If I see the babies are all like that, too, then okay, fair enough, even the babies suck. But, like, usually that's not how we apply the morality, right? It's like, are the babies guilty of that sin in a literary way?
I've seen a lot of shows, movies, and books where you know the audience thinks like, oh, it's a baby monster, it's probably cute, and then the baby attacks and it's like, kill the baby.
Because I guess even the Avengers addressed this, like Rhodey wanted to go back and murder baby Thanos, right? But then everybody else was like, oh. Like, again, I guess this is asking that question. So
I was thinking more like Alien. But, you know,
sure.
To each their own, I guess.
we'll come back to this. It might not influence anything, but like you say, it's like Adar is trying to just get this society, but Aragorn is one that would actively stand in the way. Elendil, everyone would actively stand in the way of that orcish society ever happening. And that's pretty evil, right? That theoretically. That could be pretty evil. So,
I said, I don't think the orcs even want the society. I think Adar wants the society, and Adar is pretty much not an orc.
Right. He was half twisted based on their lore. Right. He was a half mutilated orc, half orc, half elf.
Yeah, and like not even the orcs don't even care about other orcs. The troll walks in with an orc head, and Adar looks at it for half a second, and maybe frowns. All the other orcs over there are like, yeah, man, whatever.
Yeah, yeah. All right, my next rant. I will move from the orcs to. I won't really go that long into this because I kind of did with episode 2. That thread of the fact that like we've got this guy, he just shows up, changes his form, and I imagine some of the other elven.
Can we talk about him a little bit later? I want to hear what your third point is because I have so much to add about the whole Adar situation that I want to give it some time. Because when I
sorry, I was talking about Sauron now, but
yeah,
okay.
no, that's what I mean. Sorry, I don't know who I said, but
okay.
What was your third point?
Third, the eagle showing up at the end definitely doesn't.
Let's talk about that.
Okay, so that the eagles can talk, and I think
I wrote that down.
I think people forget that. I think like the eagles can talk. He doesn't say a word. He just shows up, looks around, flies off. That doesn't mean anything.
I have two questions here that are just in all caps. One, why does an eagle care about this? The show gives no reason.
It's meant to be dude, the eagles are servants of Manwë too. Like he's definitely there for a reason, and it's not to endorse the one that hates elves and the Valar and Manwë.
That eagle had a brain.
I don't think so. I mean,
it didn't communicate in any way. I think the people of Numenor look at it as like, oh, the eagle prefers Pharazôn. The eagle prefers Pharazôn. Well, I think what happened was the eagle, for some reason, showed up to this. Whether it was told to or it did so of its own accord, I have no reason. Yeah. Or it just found its way there and was like, what's going on, guys? This dude walked at it and then went, why is this dude walking at me? And then left.
Yeah. It's strange. If you're going to humanize something, humanize the eagle.
Yeah, like, what? What is going on? This whole scene was so weird. I don't know.
The Palantir exploding. I'm like, okay, like, oh, bro. Like, have they read The Lord of the Rings? I still don't think they have. What I want to know
is just like, it's like, oh, this Palantir is forbidden. I'm like, why?
Yep. I mean, there are 7 stones, and it's assumed in the lore. I mean, all 7 stones come from Numenor eventually over to Middle Earth, right? But it's assumed that I imagine the different lords of like the lords of Andunier and then just kind of around the star that is the Numenorian continent. Like I imagine there are multiple Palantiri there. But okay, yeah, I agree. It's what, and it just like blew again. It blew up. Like what? It's silly,
I don't understand
lazy
how
plot
the
writing.
Palantir could be a secret that needs to be kept, and then also, the moment anybody says, "Hey, this is a Palantir," everybody in the room knows what it is.
Yeah. Oh, it's Elvish communication. They took the Elven side, bro. What? Like how? Again, it was a secret, like you said, until it wasn't. What? So I thought that scene was kind of. Yeah, see, this is where I still think episode 3 is at least as bad as episode 1, if not worse, because of these other things. Numenor's fine. I don't know. Like, they're just waiting around until the fall happens, and it's starting to, but I feel like they rushed Numenor too early in the series. Really, Numenor should have been a season 2, season 3 sort of thing, and not a season 1, to where we got more elves and rings of power stuff season 1, and then Numenor should have started to deteriorate over time. But again, we would have needed a timeline for that to happen. Silly me.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. It was a dumb scene. At the same time, I just like all the actors, man. Everybody there, Muriel, Pharazôn,
100%.
All these characters, they look
set
cool.
pieces.
Then,
bro,
I love the way they interact with each other. It's believable. I've seen this this political shifting and all this stuff. It's like if we take the presumptions that are given to us, it's not nearly as inconsistent and bad as season 1 was, where it's like they tell you one thing and then 2 episodes later they show you something completely different. Granted, we haven't seen anything in the later season. There's plenty of time for them to screw that up. We'll see. But like right now, I didn't think it was. There are these lore things that bug us, right? There's these lore things like with the eagle, and if they don't bring the eagle back, it's just going to bug us, right? But if they bring the eagles back and they make it a huge plot point, then it's really going to descend into being like, all right, this really sucks, all right? But I do think that they made one massive blunder, and I want to talk about it now. It's kind of going to overarch all 3 episodes, but then it's going to feed more, I think, into your discussion about Anatar and his involvement in episode 3.
Cool.
And that is that they had, and they may be trying to do this, but I don't see how they could, but they had a golden opportunity instead of humanizing Sauron, of making him a mastermind. They had a golden opportunity to do it. Think about it. Think about the way that all these rings are set up, all right? The necessity of the rings is being, like, put forward by the world crumbling around these people, all right?
Yeah.
The elves, they have this whole thing with the tree. I don't want to get into that. I will, though. But, like, I'm not going to describe it more, all right? They have the whole thing with the tree. The dwarves, they have this earthquake, and now they're running out of food. The men have been displaced by Adar. His armies are just ruining them. And so Sauron has the opportunity to go to Celebrimbor and say, the world needs these rings because the world is falling apart. And it would be so much better if they showed Sauron making it happen. If they showed Sauron's influence corrupting the tree. If they showed Sauron's, earth, like, it wasn't just the mountain exploding. Sauron pushed, like, he made that earthquake happen. And it was his magics and his pre-planning that made it so that when the singers tried to sing, it got worse. He is ordering Adar, or otherwise manipulating Adar, into just ravaging the Southlands. And then when the Númenóreans come, they fall into another Sauron trap, and it makes things even worse. They could even go even better. We see a scene in episode 1 where Sauron has the ability, I don't know how he gets it, to control these monsters. He controls a warg. He controls a sea monster. We have a scene later where Círdan the shipwright has his boat bumped when he's about to drop the rings. And then he looks into it, and he gets corrupted. Imagine if that was the sea monster instead of, presumably, Olmo. Or maybe that's what Círdan thinks it was. Or, like, that would be so interesting. We actually get to see Sauron corrupting this tree. We get to see him putting doubt into the minds of the elves. But you know why we don't? Because they felt the need to go in episode 1 and make him a loser. He lost control of all the orcs. He gets out and he just wants to die. And so there's no time. There's no time for him to set this plot points together because he feeds immediately into meeting the old man, stealing the old man's amulet, getting shipwrecked, and meeting Galadriel. There's no time for him to have already gone to these places and ruined these things.
Ryan, I'm telling you, dude, they're doing too much and not enough. I can't tell you if Sauron actually wanted to die in that beginning of episode 1. Yes, okay, I see what you mean with that rant, right? Like, I couldn't tell you. He was the actor playing him was great and all that stuff, but I couldn't tell you what his actual motivations were, which is fine. He's a liar. He's a manipulator. That's okay, but I can't tell if he wants to. Since they're humanizing him, we should know a bit about more of like what he wants. Does he want to die and just whatever, or does he want power, or what does he actually want? And dare I say, it would maybe even be an improvement on the lore, on the canon, if they did set up these reasons for the rings, the agency for these rings kind of falling into place. Because I really do enjoy how the canon makes this a vanity project, but you could make this a band-aid for something going wrong in every kingdom.
Right? In my vanity project.
Yeah, and in my mind, like the lore, the vanity project is like the elves of Lindon and Gil-galad's kingdom. They're at the height of their power, and Celebrimbor and so forth, they're at the height of their skill, and that's why they make the rings. And men, they're at the height of their power in the world. The Númenóreans are great, the middlemen are doing okay, better than they ever have in the past, and the dwarves are at their height in Khazad-dûm. And that's why they take their rings, is because a good thing is never good enough. And so, like, in my mind, that's why they do it in the canon. But in the show, it could very well be, especially if Sauron's going to be, like, the main character at the end of this, like, him masterminding all of these problems. But that would take competent characters. Yeah, that would take competent characters and competent writing, which is just not there. It's just not there. Yeah, it would take too much planning. I don't know, like. But at the same time,
I'm sitting here and I'm questioning myself, like, why did they take the time to watch? Is it just so that they could say, "Hey, man, Sauron is a powerful Maiar"? Like, oh, he turns the sea creature away. Like, oh, he, you know, he beats all these orcs to the ground and then gets stabbed to death and then comes back. It's like, why is this guy so cool yet so not? It's the exact same problem they had with Galadriel in season 1. And granted, just by the right of them not singing Galadriel's praise at the beginning of like the entire season and then spending the rest of the time grinding her character into dirt, like she's an improvement, because they didn't even waste time going like, nah, Galadriel's actually cool, but we're not going to show it. But now they're just doing it to Sauron. Like, what is going on? And so I get exactly what you mean. It's a simple change. It's really not that hard. And I was able to, with what they actually wrote already, with what appeared on screen, all I have to do is take out a couple scenes, and I now have something that is a plausible fan theory, which is what like these shows strive for.
Yeah.
Strive for engaged fans, making like asking questions like, okay, you know, we saw Sauron show up in this scene and say these things. We don't know how these things happened. Does that mean that he's responsible? Like, and I wish so much that I could say, yes, there's no like detracting evidence. There's nothing that makes it impossible for Sauron to have been responsible for all these things, except there actually is, because he can't be responsible for like manipulating the orcs and Adar and all these things to go to these places and ruin these people's lives, because he spends the first half of the first episode of this season. That's why it's so low for me, by the way. Just doing nothing. Just being morose. And, you know, he's talked to by this guy, and for a brief second, I was like, are they about to try to redeem Sauron? They didn't. but
good.
I was like, really? And he's like, it's just such a convoluted storyline that doesn't need to be this complicated. It needs to be as simple as these things occur, and they can still occur in the same order that they did. I think that it would be better if they tried to line up their timeline a little bit more, but everything could still happen. All you need to do is just, instead of showing Sauron get, you know, defeated by Adar and, you know, be moody about it for X time that we don't know, show him setting these things up. Because this is the thing, is that if you want to, you have to balance. If you want a character to seem smart, you have to show them doing smart things. You can't completely surprise at the end and just assume that you're going to nail it and that you're going to be able to show all the things that they did in the background that your audience had no way of noticing. You have to show the parts of the plan coming together. And I think that they could have done it, but they didn't.
You're totally right. And I mean, part of this occurred to me with, again, that thread, that Elven rant that I started to get into last episode of review, but it didn't occur to me to that degree that like they could have made this super cool. And I think they're putting the cart before the horse, because the Elven rings being forged first is actually kind of a problem that I think the show's starting to run into a bit more and more. They're the good rings, and so you can use them to advertise for more rings. I actually think that is kind of a neat aspect. However, again, our elves, our characters are morons sometimes. Like Elrond is kind of right. You know, this is straight up Sauron. It's not like it's Anatar. It's not something like that. This is straight up Sauron helped to craft these rings. You're going to put them on? Okay, cool. Like, again, it gets back to the core of Sauron must not be that bad in this show. Like, to start off. Morgoth, we're told, is pretty bad. But again, not even as bad as he definitely was in the lore. Sauron, definitely bad in the lore. Because, you know, it's bad enough to where the Lord of all Maiar, like the chieftain of all the Maiar, Eonwë, came and it did all this stuff. Again, I don't know what the elves do and don't know, but our elves are so stupid sometimes. You know Sauron's out there. You know he's actively manipulating the elves. And he had something to do with these rings, because Halbrand helped create the rings, and Halbrand is Sauron. You don't go back to Eregion. You send one person there with a message, and they die. Like, of course they do. You know, it's just, they're dumb. They're dumb. And so the problem with this is going to be like, eventually you're going to have these rings for men created, these rings for dwarves created. But again, everybody should know by the time that they're done being created, that's Sauron, bro. That's Sauron doing these. And again, if he's at all bad at all, and it very well could be that the show teams Galadriel back up with Sauron against Adar at some point. Because again, Sauron doesn't actually seem that bad in the show. Like, I don't know. They haven't had him confirm do enough evil things. He's killed Finrod and he's, done some things and he destroyed that boat. But like, I guess to our characters, either they're stupid or Sauron's not that evil in the show, which is crazy because,
or did he just was on the boat when it was destroyed and then just tamed the monster? I don't even think he's. Yeah, you're right. No, Sauron right now is nobody. He's a nobody. He's a loser.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
He kind of is.
The big,
I guess we
huge
saw
problem.
We saw his power in that he probably could have averted that sea monster and didn't until it averted from him. But then he also let that one guy drown and he took his heraldry, right?
Yeah.
But again, that's one of the more evil things we actually see Sauron do in the show,
which is crazy.
It's crazy. This is like the Darth Vader of Lord of the Rings. And again, for somebody to be like, oh, Darth Vader, like, he wasn't that bad. Bro, like, these guys, there are Dark Lords for a reason. You can't, I don't know. So that's kind of where I'm at, is they have written themselves into either their characters are stupid or Sauron isn't that evil.
And I think they're trying to go for the latter. I think that the play that they're trying to make, the canon that they are using is one where Sauron is a non-factor yet. Which is why the elves don't take him seriously. It's why it's part of the reason why Galadriel feels like a level of like, you know what, Sauron, he tricked me. And instead of me putting my pride aside to be like, yo, everybody ring the alarm bells, Sauron is actually straight up back. And I have, Elrond here with evidence to prove it. Like, let's, marshal the armies, is because none of these characters really care that much, because they remember Sauron maybe as being a person with a name from Morgoth's forces who now is just alone, and the elves are focused on themselves. And he's like, they say it. He's like, he's got no army, he's got nothing. Right? Adar, this other dude, presumably also from the War of Wrath, because just based on the timeline. Maybe this is the first time they've heard of him, or whatever they presume about him. That dude actually does have an army and is killing people right now. So, but they didn't make that clear. You know what they could have done that would make this so much clearer? Clean up a timeline. Let us know what's going on. All right. If you want us to like reasonably buy in that the elves haven't They don't know how bad Sauron could possibly be. Let's clean this up. Let's make it clear.
Yeah.
Like, okay, here are the things that Sauron has done already, and here are the things that we fear that he might do. Let's clean it up. How long is the trip from Eregion to Lindon? At first they were like, oh, they're teleporting, it's annoying. Now it's actually a plot problem, all right? Because how long has that messenger been dead? How many messengers have they sent? We saw 2 dead elves. We saw 1 dead message. What's going on there? Also, good question. If Sauron is not masterminding this, if he is this humanized character that's just kind of showing up, doing what he thinks he can, who's killing the messengers?
No idea. No. Well, and also, I'll be entirely honest. This is where season 1 also is not kind to season 2, because they showed that Morgoth killed the 2 trees. Like, they showed that in episode 1 of season 1. Like, he did so many evil things by himself. And so for them to be like, oh, this was his number 2? He doesn't have an army. Are you kidding me? Like, he killed the 2 trees. Like, they showed that.
At no point have they said so far in the show that he was Morgoth's right-hand man.
But how do they know him then? I guess is the thing.
The only reason I can think of they know Sauron is because the only reason in the show canon, in the show existence, what we have confirmed from stuff on screen, is that the only reason why the elves might care about Sauron is because he killed Galadriel's brother.
That is crazy.
That's it. And that could have happened in a fight. They haven't talked about any of it on how it could happen. And that's the big problem with this weird, messed up timeline, is that it makes it very convoluted. And it gives them a bit of a gray area where they can try to MacGyver something together. But what really frustrates me is that I was able to MacGyver something better with what they gave me.
Yep. Yep.
And you know what the scariest part is, Joysten? You know what? You know what's going to haunt me? Not really, because I don't care that much. You know what's going to haunt me about this is that I fear that they're going to try to do it anyway. That they're going to try to make that whole great, like, conspiracy work.
Sure.
And it's just not going to land because of the reasons that I brought up. Because they showed that there's not enough time for Sauron to have set this up. There's too much time him being either a loser blob or a loser dude. And
yeah. Yeah, it's, I don't know. I still think this is a better season so far than season 1 was.
I very much agree.
But it's still rough. And I had hope, right? Maybe that's just a flaw of mine here, but the trailers did look better for this. And so I am kind of let down again. It's for all the reasons we're saying here. If we're coming up with better things, if characters are not acting internal, like either they're not acting consistent or we don't know what the internal lore is to where they should or shouldn't be acting consistent with that. And there's no timeline. And there's no, like, it's just whatever. It doesn't matter because the writers will have the characters just do whatever the writers want. And you don't really need a reason for it because it's just mush. And this is why Rings of Power will never be a great thing. It's never going to be that good. It's just, it gets in its own way. Its systems within itself don't work. And so it'll always be at best mid.
You want to know why I think everything that we're saying is happening? Because I looked at the Wikipedia page today. I was sitting in the library and I was curious. I looked it up. And I looked up how, like, these episodes written by and directed by credits. And here's a fun fact for you. The first 6 episodes of this season are each going to be written by a different person.
Yeah, I don't know why we do that. Oh my gosh. Oh, I don't know why anyone thinks, oh yeah, like, and you hardly need these guys to talk. Let's just have a different thing going on every time and keep it fresh, keep it new. No, you can't get a consistent idea. Written by committee, Ryan. Just like you said, written by committee.
In episode 3's writer did not write at all for season 1. Also, even just the director. Like, I don't think people understand. Like, there's writing and then there's directing. But the director has a lot of way that writing, unless you've done, like, you're involved with it, if you have a past in theater or other research studies, it may not be completely obvious to you just how much power over a project a director has on the way, not just the way that things happen, but the way that things come across. Like, you can write a line and give it to a director, give it to 5 different directors and have the line mean 5 different things. And here's another thing is that so far there is at least one director that is directing all of season 2. However, the first half of season 1, the first 5 episodes, they had 2 different directors, and neither of them are returning, it looks like.
Oh, awesome. Oh, it's just, oh my gosh.
No, but, I don't want to, I'm going to say some names, not because I'm putting them on blast, because I don't think that anybody here is a bad actor or is doing something that is, inherently. I think that there's just too many people with too many visions that's ruining this. And you have Charlotte Brandstrom, who is at least partial directing credit on all the episodes of season 2 so far. She only had directing credit on 2 episodes of last season, episodes 6 and 7, which I feel like I remember being 2 of the better ones, but honestly, I could just be making that up. J.A. Boyona and Wayne Che Yip were 2 directors that between the 2 of them, they directed the first 5 episodes of season 1. Neither of them are slated to be directing. Oh, they actually also those 2 directors directed 6 of the 8 episodes, all the ones that Charlotte Brandstrom did not. So episodes 1 through 5 and then 8. Neither of them have any directing credits in episodes 1 through 3 of season 2. Oh. There are 3 episodes of season 2, 4, 5, and 6 that have yet to be announced who the director is, but episodes 7 and 8 will also not be those 2 guys that literally did, or I assume the 2 guys. I don't know. They are. Just wanted to catch that real quick. Yeah, okay. Those 2 guys who did 2/3 of the first season 1 will not be directing season 2, at least more than half of it.
Oh, that's not good.
Also, I'm glad. The writing room has changed, and
this is the research that. This is what I'm not good at. Like, I know the lore, I know what Tolkien wrote, but I'm not like. I don't really follow. I'm not great at knowing actors, and
I don't know any of these people's names. Yeah. I looked up the Wikipedia page, and I looked at this table, and I was like, oh no.
Yeah, it's a problem. And again, I don't know. I mean, maybe I shouldn't be shocked after season 1 and how that turned out. I really did hope we'd learn from some of our mistakes here. Suppose not. I mean, yeah, I don't know. For me, I can't place this episode any higher than what I placed episode 1 at least. And I think based on like how based on the rants that this one gave to me with just the implications and so forth, I gotta probably give this one a 3 out of 10. I think that's where I'm gonna land.
I think you and I we're gonna diverge here because all of my rant, for me, it's split between episodes 3 and 1. And so, but the difference is that episode 3 had things that I enjoyed. I enjoyed the Sauron plot for the most part. I think there's interesting implications going on, although I have some questions, but questions are good.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think that because of that, I think it's better than episode 1. And like I said with my scale, I can't sit here and open up the episode with a scale and say, even with all of these problems that I've outlined, I do think that they are going to come into play and ruin my watchings later. But I can't lie to you. I can't lie to you and say that I watched episode 3 today on my couch after dinner, and I was like, this is easily the most engaged I've been.
It's fair. And again, I think for me, my rankings come from like, what does this do for the larger universe? What does this do as a gateway for people into Tolkien lore and stuff? And I think that's how I went about a lot of my season 1 rankings. And so for this gives so many of the wrong impressions about Tolkien's works. Again, so many wrong impressions about characters and their morality. Gives so many wrong impressions about how dumb the elves are. And again, they continue to treat Galadriel so poorly, even though she is...
Poor Galadriel, bro. I'm hopeful that in future episodes we can see some redemption for this character. Like, I'm all about having a character that makes mistakes at the beginning and you get to watch them improve over time. But we're now 3 of 8 episodes into season 2 of a show where even starting from season 1, this character was petulant, childish, and like prideful. And
and I will say in all my rankings too, I think in discussing them with you, every rank has dropped. Like from when I watched them to when we actually went through them. And that's interesting because again, it's like if you just watched this show and just were like, "Oh, cool." You'd have probably more fun with it than if you actually deep dive kind of into the characters and stuff, because there are things that are revealed. Like, to be honest, and you brought this up and it's kind of been in the back of my mind, like, yeah, maybe the Silmarillion literally has nothing to do with the show. Not even is it like not pulled from the Silmarillion. Maybe it's literally a different universe. The Silmarillion has as much to do with this as Star Wars does. Like, maybe it's literally so different. Maybe Galadriel is like younger than Gil-galad. Maybe Galadriel is like his niece or something, or like just an annoying like little girl to him. Maybe because I pull from the knowledge of like, oh, that's Finarfin's daughter and that's Finwë's granddaughter. Maybe that's not true in the lore of the show. It's true, obviously, in the lore of Tolkien.
I think that is probably true. Just the only way I could think about
terrible.
The only way I could think about it is if you think about who Galadriel is, even in the context of this world, the only way that the Galadriel that we see on screen to make some sort of resembling sense with the one that they're trying to, like, that they actually show is that Galadriel was a non-important figure until the end of the War of Wrath. And then she decided to become a warrior. But that doesn't make sense because I don't know how she would become commander of the Northern Forces, unless there's really, you know, it's like
no one else.
unless there's really no one else. But I mean, think about it. Like, if you were Gil-galad, right?
Yep.
Or if you were Elrond, okay, and this is what I would call an inconsistency in what the show is kind of showing. If you want to show Galadriel as a great warrior of elves, and you presume then that she's been a great warrior of elves for her whole life, both of these two people would grow up idolizing her.
Yeah. Yep.
But that's not what we see. We don't see them.
No, it's not.
We don't see the kind of character who sees Galadriel, and like it would be almost way more interesting if they both like met, like they idolized Galadriel, who was a great warrior in the First Age, and then they met her, and Galadriel was this prideful character. You can even keep that too. I don't know why you should, but you could, and have Elrond, who's like on Team Galadriel, talks to her for a bit, learns about like all the problems that she's showing and all like the poor decision makings, and then decides like, listen, this isn't working. Like,
it's true. And again, like, if we're throwing the Silmarillion out in terms of like, this isn't inspired, nor is it even close to the Silmarillion at all, then that is definitely not doing the show any favors.
I don't know if we can toss it out. I think a healthier way to look at it would be to don't assume anything in the Silmarillion has happened until we see it shown.
And so that's kind of what I mean, is it's like, okay, if we can only have season 1 to rely on and no source material, nothing, the show's even worse. Because...
really?
Well, let me explain my point. I think it's even worse, because then if you go back to season 1, Galadriel's going off about all this stuff happening with this guy Morgoth and Melkor and all this stuff, but she doesn't really care about that because she doesn't care about one of his servants that she knows, because he killed her brother, is one of his servants. She's not doing enough about him. She's strung up by politics. She's a warrior sometimes. She's a hot-headed warrior sometimes, but not at other times. Like, I think actually the show's quality just plummets when there is not the inclusion, like when it's like, hey, Silmarillion readers, throw that stuff out, because again, until we say it's canon, it's not canon to the show. So, and that's where it breaks me. If this is that far devoid of the Silmarillion, that I'm gonna be just ruthless to this show. I won't give it the benefit of the doubt, because all of its backstory it has to set up. It can't rely on the Lord of the Rings. It can't rely on the Hobbit or the Silmarillion, because it's on its own. It wants to be on its own pedestal. It can be on its own pedestal. It has to do all the heavy lifting. Tell us who Sauron is. Is he just this kind of weak, random dude from Morgoth's army that like happened to survive? Or is he Sauron, the Lord of the Rings? You can't have it both ways. You can't simultaneously say, oh yeah, like this is the guy, but at the same time, he's not. Like, he's kind of human, you know? He's humanized. These are the horrible, terrible orcs, but at the same time, they have kids. Like, they're not all bad. Come on. Like, you can't have it both ways of like, this is, yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what would be worse, if it's taking the Silmarillion and just changing it, but expecting us to kind of be like, okay, like, some things are in line, or if it's just like, nope, throw out everything you know, this is a pure fan fiction. I don't know. It's horrible either way, but again, I think it could be seen as worse. You did come up with
one point that I'm going to agree with, and that's about the foundations, right? Where if we're expected to forget or not take things for granted from the Silmarillion, we can't take foundational information about characters granted either. And that's a huge point. And I do think that actually might be what they're doing. I don't know if the show is going to be portraying Sauron as being nearly as important in the First Age as he was, because all we've actually seen so far is him fail to sway a room full of orcs.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know. We'll have to see from here. So
for me,
all right.
for my rating, I can't. I gotta be honest.
Fair.
It was a way more fun, and I really enjoyed half of it. And all the things that I'm mad about, I can't really like put on episode 3 particularly. They really just tank episode 1 for me because all the things that made me mad happened in that episode.
Fair. For me, I think my scores never stay from the beginning of a review to the end. Talking to you always changes my scores. So I'll say that because originally I gave this one a 5 out of 10, but now like going into it, I'm like, ooh, like the implications here are not great.
Now for me, I think I came in with an 8. I think you've brought up a lot of good points about specifically like what hasn't been said and potentially what needed to have been said for this to make sense. I got to drop it to like a 6 as well. So I think it's like on par with episode 2, although I did enjoy it more. If you have crazy theories, post them. If you want me to read them, Yoshi will probably read your comments. I won't.
Yeah.
If you want me to read them, put them in the Discord chat.
Yes. Good plug. So yeah, if you guys would like to support the channel, please consider joining us on Patreon or YouTube. And thanks to our Valar tier patrons and YouTube members: Peter Sheppard, John Hume, Rhys Jenkins, Arthur Merlin, Theodore, Andrew Carlisle, and Zoomi. Ryan, thank you so much, man. It's been fun reviewing all these with you, and I look forward to more.
This has been a long night, but we'll be back in a couple days.
Yes, sir. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us on this adventure. Until the next one.